What's up, guys? This is Bad Fast Marley on Left Turn Broadcasting. We're gonna go over Talladega one more time for you guys. Been working on this thing all day. As you know, Left Turn Broadcasting, we do the 38 car cash races at Talladega every Thursday night. We call it Thursday Night Thunder or TNT. And it's really been bothering me that some of these guys, they can go without taking tires. And I'm like, how are they doing that? Because my setup was really fast, but I wasn't able to do that pit stop and not take tires at all. I had to take right sides. So I worked on this thing and worked on this thing and went an entirely different direction with it. And I want to share it with you guys. But first things first, I put out a video on wheel settings. One thing I found out real fast is that those wheel settings that I gave you, those are great at all the other tracks, but certainly not for plate tracks. It is just way too touchy. On the other tracks, I like that real, quick bite into the turn, where you could just kind of throw the car down there and make those abrupt turns so that you could, let out the gas and then get right back in it really fast to power out of a turn. Where here at Talladega, going down these straightaways, when you're in the draft and there's a car in front of you that's swirly, and another word for that, I like swerving a little bit, it really messes the car up on you because it's so touchy with those settings. So I wanted to show you different settings here. And these are my Talladega settings. Talladega or Daytona, either one. Just go over this with you real quick. I use the paddle shifters. I have the gear shift here, but I prefer the paddles. It's a lot easier. Keep both hands on the wheel. Now it depends on other tracks. I'll use the shifter, but force feedback, I keep that at one click. You can raise that up if you want, if you're comfortable with it. I am getting a little bit more and more used to it. On Heat 4, I was running my force feedback right about here, but the Heat 5 settings seem to be a lot more sensitive for some reason. I don't know if it's just a G29 thing or if it's the same way on your T150s or any other wheel that you might be using, Fanatec. Hit us up in the comments. Let me know if that's just a G29 thing, but it's definitely more touchy on Heat 5. So I'm going with one click there. Impact effects are off. Center and spring is on. I like the tension. I like when I turn into the turn on this G29, I can almost feel it. If I have a nice grip on my wheel, I can almost feel it click just a little bit, and that allows me to hold that perfect line around these turns on these super speedways, and I call it getting out the paint truck, but you can really paint those lines and just make it so hard for somebody to get around you if you can hug that bottom line. Dead zone, as always, is all the way down. You want no dead zone in that wheel. Sensitivity. This is where we're getting to here. The steering range and the steering sensitivity, I put those right into the middle. Now the other setup giveaway that setup wheel settings, I should say. Sorry, I have them like this. That's my other tracks. But this going right to the default down the middle right here, that really solidifies the car along with your wheel lock, and I'll show you that in just a bit when we hop into the setup. But yes, putting these right in the middle, it's just a very clean, easy feel. A lot of it is not necessarily the wheel settings. It's also your wheel lock, like I had mentioned, and your steering offset. The steering offset is huge because where you have that steering offset, it determines where your wheel is going to, where your car is going to go straight, and that little bit of a dead spot in the center of this G29. And then, as usual, I keep the throttle sensitivity and the brake sensitivity all the way down. the brake sensitivity, that allows me to pump my brakes coming into pit road, but still keep a good amount of speed. I'm not slowing down really fast. I'm able to gradually slow down, but still keep my speed going into the pits, and I seem to do really good time getting on and off of pit road. Throttle sensitivity, this doesn't really matter because you're you know, pedals to the metal on these plate tracks. So I mean, if you're running behind, you're letting off a little bit, but I'm more so, I'm still on the gas. I'm just letting off just a hair, just to give a little bit of a buffer there, so that we don't get all nose to tail and somebody gets knocked into, and then it causes a chain reaction and whatnot. So that's the settings. They're much different. I know a lot of you know, the LTB fans here, they've reached out to me and said, hey Marley, these settings are not working very good on these plate tracks, so can you go over that again? So that's why I'm making this video for you guys. Call it Dega 2.0. Alright, I'm going to jump out of here and go right into this setup. There's that 12 car. Now I'm going to show you my race setup and my qualifying setup. I know a lot of you guys like to do them, you know, 3% races where it's 6 laps, or 4% where it's 8 laps, and the 1 times wear, and you could really just, you don't have to worry about any tire wear or anything like that. So I have, of course, my qualifying setup, and then my race setup is for when you race the 3 or 4 times wear, like we do in the Dega races on Thursday nights. That is where you need to pay attention to your tire wear, and that's where the setup comes into handy, because I'm able to run my entire first run and pit with about 45 to 55% left on my tires, depending on how still you're able to keep that car. If you're able to drive it where it's steady and you're not swerving, you can keep those right side tires great enough where you could do another run without tires. You could just do fuel only and make a ton of time on track. Okay, so this is the qualifying setup here. It's, like I said, it is a little out of the box. It is definitely different. I am running 15 track bars. I was trying to figure out how these guys are able to not take tires. It was baffling me. I couldn't understand it. I tried everything. I tried lowering cambers. I tried all sorts of stuff, and I still couldn't save my right side tires. By raising up those track bars, it definitely did the job. But I had to adjust so many other things to combat that, like the high front sway bar, and then obviously that raises up my bumps in the front and whatnot, and then you kind of combat it with the wedge. But this car earlier, my qualifying car here, I was doing 228 miles an hour in the draft. It was wild. But that's the qualifying car. We'll jump right here into the race. This race setup is pretty much similar. The only difference is going to be the wedge and the cambers. Now the cambers are dropped down to 5 instead of 8s. You can try to drop them a little bit lower, but I didn't notice too much of a difference as far as the right side tire wear. Now the wedge I dropped at 3 clicks because not having those 8s on the camber tightens the car up a little bit, going from 8 to 5. So you want to go down a little bit on the wedge, kind of keep that even feel on the car. But yep, the bumps, they're at the lowest that you can go with that front sway bar being 1.875. If you go any lower, when you go into the turns, the car starts to wobble and shake, and it'll take you right to the wall. So that is the absolute lowest that you can go. You might be able to do like a 7799 or something like that, but I like to keep them all nice and solid. Makes your car feel smoother. Springs, got them maxed out. Tires are maxed out. Track bars are maxed out. Brake bias, I like to do like a 78. You can go 79 or 80 if you want. You don't want to go too much front, and you don't want to go way too much back brake. When you get on the brakes to try to come to pit road at Dega, if you have it too much to the back, the car will want to almost spin out on you while you're, working down your gears and trying to come to a stop. By having it up a little higher at that 78, you can go 79, 80, like I was saying. That when you hit your brakes, it's more of a front brake base, so it really keeps the car in a straight line when you're trying to brake. Now, I don't know as far as what you guys are running with your brake smoothing or whatnot, but I have mine completely turned off. I was told by a couple people that if you have that smoothing on, that it's harder to brake. So that low brake setting in the wheel settings might not be the greatest for you. If that's the case, I suggest taking it off, especially when you're running other tracks. Having that brake smoothing off makes you faster. And then the gears, the first gear, it's a low crawl, but when you're starting your race or whatever, you don't even notice it. But starting from stop, it is. But this is all worth it because that 550 rear end ratio allows me to run the lowest. My third gear is my drive gear. You don't use fourth at all, but it allows you to use the lowest setting, and by doing that, I'm able to throw my grill tape up to 60. You can actually run 65 if you want to, but I prefer to run 60. I don't want to take any possibility of overheating, and I feel generally that if your car is running any higher than 254 to 257, if you're anything higher than 254, you start to lose power, you start to lose top end. And if you're running in a very fast lobby, like some of these good lobbies you can jump into, or a league race, you're probably going to overheat. But 60, you have no worries with that. I didn't touch over here. Front weight is pushed to the max. The wedge, as I said, is at a solid 49. You can adjust that for your liking. Ride height, front is lifted all the way up. That buries the rear spoiler. It seems like, it doesn't make much sense, but for some reason in this game it does. I mean, if you think about it, if you lift the front end up, it is going to kind of bury the rear spoiler and create less drag. But in real life, I would feel like I would want that car slammed down and throw as much tape as you can on it until I overheat. But and then the other thing, the wheel lock. I have this thing at 0. When I'm going into these turns, I'm very little movement with my steering wheel, and I'm able to just hold that line perfect, especially with that 0. It just makes the car, it doesn't want to shoot up or down the track. It just feels very solid. You can adjust that also, as to your liking. I mean, I've used it with a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. I played with it all, but the 0 is what I figured I would put on here to start you guys off, because it just really snugs up the car, because the car is a little bit looser in itself. So that wheel lock, having it at 0, really firms it up and makes it a solid car for you guys. But yeah, that is our Talladega car, and I will be coming out. I've had a request for Daytona. I will be coming out with a Daytona setup here very shortly in the next few days, and definitely get you guys up to speed there. It's going to be probably pretty similar to the Talladega. I know, on Heat 4, I used to run the same exact setup on both tracks, just adjust the wedge a little bit. But Heat 5 seems to be a little bit different, especially with the grip and all that. And I know the track at Daytona is smaller, so, and the turns are a little different. So I mean, we'll work on something and try to put out a nice Daytona setup out for you. But until next time, thanks for joining us, and I appreciate all the subscriptions. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next setup.